Well, I want to talk about JFK Jr. and his murder, because this is Putin the cat, by the way. He's pretty chill, but he can fight when he needs to. I'm surprised. God. Reminds me of what's going to happen with gun owners when they try to screw everybody over. Anyway, JFK Jr., John F. Kennedy Jr., I say he was murdered. I don't think it had anything, that plane crash he was in. He said in the fog, inexperienced pilot. I don't buy that stuff. Obviously, if I don't know if people know, but he was going to run for New York State Senator, and after that he was going to run for president. And guess what? He would have been our next president. There's no doubt about it. And you know who ran for senator in New York State? Hillary Clinton. And she made a bid for the presidency. Now, of course, she's Secretary of State. So, quite obviously, to me, that's not, that's something you can't prove. But if you look at the number, if you just dig up in a little research, the number of Clinton campaign managers that have died in plane crashes, small plane crashes, there's a hell of a lot of them. And, if you think Vince Foster committed suicide, and, after all the, I dug into all that evidence, that was a story that was quite a while ago, but I want to rehash it here, why not? Hey, it's all relevant. The same perpetrators that, I think committed crimes are still alive today, and they're running this show. The real people's president would have been JFK Jr. And Ron Paul, I actually always had a suspicion of. I know he says all the right things, but I don't think he has the balls to really go up against anybody. Because anybody that actually goes up against the real power winds up dead. JFK Jr., just like his father, was going to go up against the real power. John F. Kennedy was assassinated because he went up with a lot of different powers. I mean, even LBJ, his successor, didn't like him. And I'm going to say it right here. I heard stories about him. He used to stand up. I heard stories about him, supposedly. I don't want to say where. Let me just put it this way. He did a lot of crazy shit when he was in the White House, on a personal level. A lot of crazy shit, You just wouldn't believe some of the stuff. And, I heard from people that were, in Secret Service at the time and stuff like that. So, pretty good source, eh? So, anyway, that's one thing about when you're in the military and you got a couple brain cells working. You get to meet some people that tell you some crazy shit. Nobody's hush-hush about everything. It's sort of like a well-known secret. There's a lot of crap like that that goes on in the White House. But, if I'm going to tell you this, if there's ever going to be a write-in for a president, put down John F. Kennedy Jr. instead of even Ron Paul. Because that would have been the people's president. And, figure who had him killed. I don't know. He was going to investigate, I was looking at something on Henry Marco's site, but it's interesting because he was going to reopen the investigation on assassination of his father. And you know who was there at the time? George Bush, right? And you know what happened with Ronald Reagan, right? He almost was assassinated. The bullet was over a half-inch further, he would have been dead, and George Bush would have been president. People got to wake up. And it's amazing, how many women support Hillary Clinton. Oh, God. You know what? That's really the whole problem with a lot of shit. It's not even so much the leaders. It is the population. It is not exactly the elite. No way in hell did the elite control everybody's thoughts as much as you think. I know there's mind control. They say transformation of America, like it's being in a trance. There's psychology being used on people through like movies and stuff like that. But still, a lot of it is the people's fault themselves. And the people elect the leaders they deserve. So, but actually the only guy that would have actually been the one that would have been bucking the real establishment would have been John F. Kennedy Jr., not so much Ron Paul. I don't know, I have my doubts about him because if he really was, I have a lot of doubts about him, I'll be quite honest, a lot. Because if he really was a thorn in the side to the elite, he would have been dead. And you know what? Nobody would do nothing about it. Just like John F. Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated, Robert Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, I say John F. Kennedy Jr. was murdered too. If you look at that plane too, somebody else pointed out, they had a tarp over the tail section of the plane when it was hauled upon the naval ship. You know, why would they put a tarp over it? Because the hill section blew up. You know? And you just look back at all, I'll repeat it again, you look back at all the campaign managers that died in small plane crashes that were involved in, you know, with the Clintons. Hey, figure it out. I mean, come on. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's not too much of a stretch of a conspiracy. But, you know, but I'm going to tell you really what probably needs to be done about all this bullshit. You're not going to be able to elect the leader to fix it. The only way to do it is through individual efforts. Actually, a lot of non-compliance, too. You know what I mean? They got freaking stupid bullshit they're trying to put down on people like it's Nazi law. You don't comply with Nazi law. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. The law of the land is the Constitution. But if there was no Constitution, there was no Bill of Rights, you still have these rights in you. Period. Nobody plays dictator, control freak, type A, type class A personality. Those type of people, those kind of people, those are the ones that usually gravitate to government, corporations. They're scum of the earth, really. You know, and everybody respects them for some reason. I don't know why. But the only president that we probably could have ever elected that would have been somebody really for the people would have been John F. Kennedy Jr. And I say he was murdered. I don't think that was an accident at all. As a matter of fact, in my mind, I'm 100% sure of it. I'm 100% sure of it. Because, you know, just looking at who would have won the Senate would have been John F. Kennedy Jr. Hillary Clinton would have never won. Not in a million years. And, you know, looking at how she cackled about, you know, Gaddafi and going to war with Iran, hey, she's the type of lady that would pull it off, or anybody else around her. So, I have to say this. You know, that shit's a lot thicker than you think. You know, and actually a lot of people go on YouTube because they're looking for affirmation about something, but actually the real thing you're going to have to do is a lot of non-compliance. If the rules are fucked up, screw the rules, man. Screw the rules. That's all I got to say. And you got to be shrewd. You got to be shrewd. That's what it is. So this is more like a psychological update, but, you know, just remember, even Ron Paul, I doubt he was legit like people think. In principle, yes, 100%. But if he was a thorn in the side, he was basically supporting his party all the way. And basically threw his support behind Romney. So how much could he be for principles, right? You know? The Kennedys actually were independent. So those were the good guys. Those were the good guys.